looking round for a butt buffet.
I love food. I love eating food. Whether it's hot or it's cold, I'm in the mood. Got stuff in my ass, that's true. It's not grass, it's fruit. I got a butt buffet.
Hello, and welcome back to Chubby Cheese. I'm Mr. Chubby Cheese. I'm Craig.
And I'm Bailey.
And today we're going to be talking about wrestling, 90s to now.
Talking about wrestling.
And you know what? The best place to talk about wrestling is right here at Chubby Cheese.
There's nothing I love more than sitting here at Chubby Cheese with a big old slice of pizza and some mashed potatoes and gravy. And
Oh, gosh. The gravy here is actually sourced straight from Dan Grogan.
oh, I know. We're just going to sit here and drink some of that and think about some big old sweaty men.
Good Lord. I mean, just two big behemoths slapping up against each other. Can you imagine if they had Big Van Vader and Bam Bam Bigelow in an all-you-can-slap gravy match?
Oh, my God.
Whew.
I can just hear the noises.
Do you think there's enough gravy to cover both men?
You'd need a lot of gravy.
Dan Grogan sources gravy straight from the natural springs.
Well, I mean, that is true, I guess. Bring on the buckets full of gravy.
You know, whenever I was pulling up into the parking lot today at Chubby Cheese, you know how they always have the people out there with, the food and they're slamming sandwiches at people. And
I love when they have the cheese sticks.
oh, God, they're so good. One portly gentleman came up to my window and he said, "Hey, fatty, roll down your window. I got these new ice cream sundaes covered in gravy." I said, "Okay, you got my interest." But now that I'm in here, before we got set up, you know what I had to do?
What'd you have to do?
I had to go get 3 more fat kids out of that dang ball pit. The door on the ball pit is too small for a reason.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord.
Good God. But besides fat kids, we'll probably talk about some big men in here.
Some big burly men.
Burly.
Burly.
Emphasis on the burr. Let's talk about some wrestling 90s to now.
All right, let's do it.
So let's start with, you want to start with the WWF, now WWE?
Yeah, WWF.
Yeah, so if we're going to be talking about it in the 90s, we'll call it WWF, right?
I mean, I don't know. Are we going to get sued? We might.
Who knows? So,
Joke's on them. We don't have any money.
yeah, so we're going to start around the 90s, right before the Attitude Era is in full swing, and work our way forward. So just right off the top, what was your favorite part of the Attitude Era?
Oh, my gosh. There was so much. But I have to say, when I think of 90s WWE Attitude Era, I think of Stone Cold.
Oh, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Above all else was the Attitude Era.
He was the pillar in that.
Here's my terrible Austin impression. You ready? Mm-hmm. "My name is Austin 316, and I'm gonna stomp a mud hole in your ass and walk it dry. What? Give me a hell yeah!"
Hell yeah! That was a good impression.
I said my name is Austin 316.
Your name is Austin 316.
Because Austin 316 says, "I'm gonna stomp a mud hole in your ass and walk it dry."
I love me some Stone Cold. And I think of him for that era of wrestling because he just embodied the anti-authority attitude that was going on back then. I mean, he was for the people, and not just the
people
fans.
People tuned in every week, living vicariously through this man.
Exactly. It was just to me, it was like watching a man at work who's angry.
He's dealing with his boss.
Yeah.
He's giving him some shit. He's tired of dealing with it. And he's going out there and he's kicking his ass about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what every single person tuning in, at the end of the day, they're coming home, they're tired of work, they're tired of their boss, and Vince comes up there and says some crap, trying to keep, hold Steve down, trying to keep him away from the championship, all this stuff. And Steve had the craziest episodes of Monday Night Raw.
Oh my God, he did.
He pulled a gun out on Monday Night Raw. You imagine anybody even saying the word gun on today's WWE, and everything's getting shut down, canceled.
Oh, I know.
Granted, that gun was a fake gun at the time. You didn't know that.
Right, but it's still, with as PC as things are now, they wouldn't have even written it into the story. Fake gun or no fake gun.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have even had that be part of the plot.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of that, in WCW, and I'm skipping ahead a little bit, the NWO. So the NWO, they started out like a gang. You know, at the back in the 90s, what was it, like the Bloods and the Crips, and a lot of stuff was going on, right? So they decided to do the NWO like a gang warfare kind of thing. And they were getting so much heat, and people didn't know. They were blurring the lines. What's real, what's not real. Whenever they were doing fights and stuff on the outside, there was actually a time where people were calling the cops thinking, like, things are actually happening. And I believe it was specifically the night that Kevin Nash threw Rey Mysterio like a lawn dart into one of the production trailers out back.
Right. I mean, yeah, the stories from back then, it really does blow my mind thinking and looking back on the way all of that, it was so blurred because, you know, they did a wonderful job of, one, keeping kayfabe, but also they integrated a lot of like what was actually going on into their script, so it had feel and it was relevant to what everyone else was experiencing too.
Now, at the beginning, before the Attitude Era is in full swing, in the WWF, they had Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall. They were Diesel and Razor Ramon. So do you know how those guys got over to WCW and how we kind of got into the Attitude Era?
So you are a lot more well-versed on WCW than I am. You know, I've heard bits and pieces. I know me and you have talked about it. But I would love to hear more. So
Hulk Hogan, if I remember correctly, I think he was moving into like television, movies, that kind of stuff. He was doing like Days of Thunder. And I can't remember if he like officially retired or whatever it was, but he was doing shows down in Florida. Eric Bischoff's, I think he's running WCW or about to start being like the VP at this point in time. And I might have that wrong. But anyways, Hogan gets hired by WCW. It's huge because he's been Vince's guy. He's been the poster child for the WWF for years.
Yeah.
And so now Hulkamania is running wild in WCW. This is a big, huge thing. Over in WWF, they still have the kind of goofy characters, Doink the Clown and, you know, IRS and like all these cartoony characters. Macho Man, Randy Savage, he gets stuck on commentary because Vince wants to go through this new age kind of thing and, you know, bring in young talent, which as a company like that, you have to bring young talent in. But some of your older talent, they weren't ready to move out of the way because they still had fuel in the tank. And as Macho Man did prove when he went to WCW, he had a lot left in the tank.
Yeah, I mean, just because somebody's getting up there in age doesn't mean you can count them out. And I think that's a mistake that we've seen made a lot of times. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there is a point where I think their bodies just can't handle it. And there is a point where you also need to introduce new talent, but there's a way to do it where you're not just immediately casting somebody aside, you know?
Yep. So Macho Man follows suit with Hulk Hogan. He's going over there now. So now we got these two huge names from WWF over at WCW. So the people at WWF are like, who's these new guys? So the audience is kind of shifting gears going, hey, these are the guys I know. They're doing this over here. They're kind of starting to view over this way. So then we got Diesel and Razor Ramon. And, you know, we all know about the whole clique situation in Madison Square Garden. I'm not going to go into that. We all know about it. So those two leave. They get the big paydays, right? They got great contracts. If somebody comes in with more money than them, they get bumped up. That was in their contracts.
So it wound up breaking WCW, wasn't it, though?
Those lot.
Contracts.
That wasn't, they were burning money. There's a lot that went into WCW's fall. But we could
do a whole episode just on that.
So Scott Hall's Razor Ramon. We know who he is. We know what he looks like, right? So one episode of Monday Nitro, we got Razor Ramon in the audience wearing, you know, his jean jacket, and he's wearing some jeans, and he pops over, and, you know, he gets the mic, and everybody's like, oh my God, you know who that is? And he grabs the mic and he goes, hey, yo. And then, you know, in his voice that he does, and this is my terrible impression of it.
Voice.
He was like, you know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here. you know? Mm-hmm. And so then everybody's like, holy crap, WWF guys are in WCW. WWF's invading WCW. So people are freaking out, you know, it's a buzz. And this is before internet.
Yeah.
So this
Everything
is just
was more word of mouth, reading a magazine. Like,
yeah.
It was a different feel. It's
You
not
had
like the world immediately knew 2 seconds later.
You had some magazines that come out like weeks later.
Right.
And like there were eventually dirt sheets and they're just news kind of thrown around, but you had to watch the next episode to see what happens. And so then, you know, Scott Hall's like, I've got a buddy. My buddy's coming in. So then you get to another episode of Nitro. Guess who's there? Big Daddy Cool. They're not saying names yet. Mm-hmm. They're still blurring those lines. Is that Diesel? Is that Razor Ramon?
Right.
He gets out there, Eric Bischoff's interviewing him, and he eventually power bombs him through the table. And all these guys are like, the audience is like, holy crap, WWF is kicking WCW's ass. This is insane. It
was a wild time to be alive.
Yeah. And then there's also the incident of the first Monday Nitro episode with Lex Luger, where WWF was taped. And he was on the episode of WWF, the episode of Nitro that aired same day. He's on it because they filmed live.
Yeah.
So he was on WWF and WCW in the same day because of how they aired it. Yep. And then we had more guys jump ship and all that. But WCW kind of got started on that edgier product first. They really wanted to blur the lines. They wanted to keep people guessing. And because they did that, WWF had to change. Mm-hmm. They couldn't keep going. They
forced their hand.
They had to. And if they didn't, they were going to go out of business. And, you know, we have that Eric Bischoff's 83 Weeks podcast named after 83 Weeks. Mm-hmm. They kicked WWF's ass in the ratings because it was must-see TV. You didn't know what was going to happen next. Hollywood Hogan, when Hogan turned at Bash at the Beach, critical moment in wrestling history. Now, you know the story of who the original third guy was. Mm-mm. I think this has been told a bunch, but originally the idea was this was going to be Sting before he became Sting.
I feel like I did know that.
Yeah. So Hogan comes out and everybody's like, oh, good, Hogan's here. He's going to help Macho Man. And then next thing you know, he's dropping a leg on him. And, man, if you watch that pay-per-view back, people are throwing trash in because he's been the guy this whole time that's like, say your prayers and take your vitamins, brother, okay, dude? You know, all the good guy stuff. And now he's telling everybody, this is the new world order of professional wrestling, brother. And, you know, everybody hates him. They're like, oh, my God, I can't believe you would turn on us, you know?
All right, Vince.
How dare you?
And can you know, I know we'll talk a lot about this later, but I have to say this right here, what you're explaining, is the magic sauce that today's wrestling just doesn't have.
I know.
The gotta see TV. I've gotta know what happens.
Yeah, it's like when if I watch an episode of Raw or SmackDown, half the time I
already know what's gonna happen because it's always like social media has ruined that magic.
Yeah.
And you know, I think some of it is the internal and the acting and all that, but I think it's more so about the access of society and how knowledgeable we are and that lack of kayfabe, that even if the storylines were great, I still don't think it would be that must-see TV. I've got to know what happens. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. In the 90s like that, they were pushing boundaries, and we didn't have, like you said, all this PC nonsense where you can't say this, you can't do that, you can't mention this. There's too many restrictions to now we're in a small box where the people go out there and they go, okay, I want to do a wrestling match and I'm going to use a table tonight. Oh, no, sorry, you can't use a table. No. Okay, we're going to use a chair. There's no headshots. We're not using chairs. No, you can't do that either. I think I'm going to punch him. No, you got to have your hand open. No punches. I'm sorry. No. You can't do that. Like, the matches are just so... Like, not to say anybody's not talented, because you have to be very athletic.
There's a lot of talent in WWE. Yeah. I don't deny that. Like, there's tons of talent.
I'd be willing to say you could flip on any episode of Monday Nitro between 1996 to 2001, and that episode, any episode you pick, would be 14 times at the least more entertaining because it seemed like everybody has something to do. Yeah. Whether it wasn't always about just the WWF title, but it felt like somebody was feuding on purpose. Like when I watch a Raw or SmackDown now, which I really don't, but when I did, like modern stuff, it's like this week, Sammy Guevara. Was Sammy Guevara? No. I was saying, who is that? What's his name?
I don't know.
Sami Zayn.
Yeah,
I mixed up Guevara from AEW.
I didn't know who you were talking about.
It's like this week, Sami Zayn is taking on Kevin Owens for the 15th time. They've had no backstage interactions. They're just going to go have a match because you've seen them do that before.
And we can get back on topic, but I think I just wanted to point that out because it is just so different. I don't think what's wrong in present day is the acting or the talent at all.
Yeah.
I think it's more plot lines and all that.
Yeah, storyline is terrible.
Back to NWO, Hulk Hogan, going bad guy.
Okay. So he goes bad guy. He cuts his NWO promo. People's throwing trash. He is now, like, just hated. And we switch over to now he's wearing all black. He's got Kevin Nash and Scott Hall in his corner. They were called the Outsiders right before Hogan shows up. And originally the NWO is 3 guys, okay? So then we get 6, who's we know as X-Pac. We pick up the Giant. He joins in. And then Ted DiBiase joins in. So now we're up to 5 people. And Ted DiBiase was the manager.
I forget about him sometimes.
Yeah. And he is the guy, like, he's from WWF. Everybody knows him as the $1 Million Man. They're not calling him the $1 Million Man, but they know. They know he's got the money. Yeah, they know he's got the money. He's got the briefcase. He's got the suit. He's looking good. He's got the cash. So back then you could do those things. You could blur those lines and be like, yeah, we got Ted back here. He's backing us. He's got the money without ever saying $1 Million Man.
Right.
They're playing off that character. They're doing that. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Vince actually came after them for Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They weren't using Diesel and Razor Ramon names, but he came after them because he was saying the characters are too similar.
Like the presence of them.
Yeah. He was saying it was too similar. Obviously, they didn't change that. So you get there, and then over in WWF, we get to King of the Ring. Oh, I hate that I don't remember the exact date. If it was 96, might have been King of the Ring 96 or 97. But anyways, you get to the Austin 316 promo where he just beats Jake the Snake in the ring and he, wins King of the Ring, and he goes over there and he gets up there and he was like, you sit up there and you thump your Bible and you talk about John 3:16. Well, Austin 3:16 says I just whipped your ass. And that changed wrestling history forever. I mean, that is still
to this day, one of the best quotes.
Oh,
out
it
of
is.
WWE.
And I've heard him talk about how he did that. He was just like, he was feeling it. He did it. And that's the kind of freedom today's wrestling doesn't have. Because
they say what's on a script.
They will give you this crappy script and tell you to follow these lines and do this and do that. And it may have changed up a little bit with Triple H now that he's running. But Vince had him running these scripts. Read the script, say the script, and it's the dumbest crap. And here's the funny thing that they do, is Vince could give you a character, and he'd be like, I want you to be an ice cream truck driver. Yeah, it's going to be great. I want you to be an ice cream truck driver, and you go out there and you sell ice cream to the people. Oh, it's good. And then you get out there, and the crowd's like, boo, you suck. And then you get backstage, and he goes, you're fired. Because it's your fault, because his character was so fucking stupid.
Oh, God.
And then people are like, yeah, I didn't get over with my ice cream truck driver character. And so they fired me without giving me a chance to do something else. See, back then, Steve Austin was given a list. Did you ever see the list of terrible names they gave him before he figured it out?
I'm pretty sure I've heard him talk about that.
One of them was like Ice McFang and Frosty McFreeze. And he was like, this is some of the dumbest shit I've ever read.
I remember how he actually got the name Stone Cold.
With his original wife.
With his wife.
Because she was like British.
There, and she had brought him his tea and
drink your tea before it gets stone cold.
And he was like, that's it right there.
He was like, hell yeah, that's it. I'm going to keep doing this terrible Austin impression, okay? I'm sorry.
Hey, and I got to say, with the Vince impression, your Vince impression's great. But for me, what puts it over the top is you get the face and the arm motions going. Like, your entire body morphs into Vince McMahon. Well, and I love it.
I have to do it because I have to make up for it's not a perfect Vince. So I'm trying to get into character. I got to feel it. I got to get in there. I got to get raspy. We're talking 90s to now, so I'm going to jump in the middle here real quick. Now that we're talking about Vince and one of the dumbest characters I can think of. You ever heard of Big Dick Johnson?
Oh my God.
So this very large, he would be a perfect Chubby Cheese customer, okay? Very large. I'm talking portly, like a small tugboat of a man with a big old belly comes out in a nice suit, and he's got a bottle. And this bottle is actually, what is that? Baby oil, okay? And I can't remember the exact segment, if they had like Vince blindfolded or they were playing a trick on maybe Jonathan Coachman, and he gets out there and he rips his suit off down to a tiny black G-string. And now we're looking at this guy's doughy white alabaster keister, 2 huge man cakes just smacking around back there. And this dude gets into like a football 3-point stance, and I think they smush Jonathan Coachman, and I could be wrong, like I said, but somebody got their face smushed right down in that Tennessee Valley.
Oh my God. And Vince was loving
He's backstage, he's like,
He's
damn,
loving it.
That's good shit. I can't believe they did that. That is great. Next week I'm putting my face in there.
I think a lot of it was he just got off on the fact that he's like, I can give people money and they'll go out there and do that.
Yeah.
He's like, if I give you money, you're going to go put your ass in his face. And
yeah.
they're like, okay.
Now, DX in 2006 or 7.
Love DX.
I do too. And DX, whenever Triple H Shawn reunited or whatever, they shoved Vince's face in Big Show's gigantic
I remember the
keister.
Gigantic keister.
Did you? So we're all over.
Keisters, Rikishi's keister. Oh my God.
Did you ever see the Rikishi moment with Vince in the ring?
Yes.
So The Rock comes out there and, he's like, you want to play the Kiss My Ass Club? I don't have a Rock impression. And
oh, yes, you do. Come on.
Do I?
You got one. Yeah, I've seen you do one. Come on.
I don't think I've done a Rock impression. I don't think it's any good.
All right. I'm going to let you slide.
Yeah, I don't think it's any good.
I feel like I've seen
I feel like I could try it, but I don't think it's any good. But Rock tells Vince, he's like, you want to play Kiss My Ass Club? He goes, I got to ask for you to kiss, or something like that. Trish's music hits. Vince lights up. He's all giddy now. His eyes are going. He's looking. He's licking his lips. His shoulders are getting, he's like, all right. So Trish gets in the ring, and she's wearing these hot pink pants and a little black t-shirt, and she's looking back at him, and he's like, Rock's like, you want to kiss that ass, Vince? And Vince is like, mm-hmm.
Oh,
he's all giddy. And she pulls her pants down, wearing a black thong, and her ass is out, and he starts getting it. Here comes like a little choo-choo comes, and Rock puts his hand out right there in front of his face, and he's like, oh, no, that's not the ass you're kissing, that's the ass you're kissing. And then Rikishi's music hit, and Vince looked like he emptied his bowels right there.
I did hear someone talking about Rikishi and how he used to back it up on everybody. And they said that he was always very respectful and cleaned it and made sure that it wasn't stinky and full of sweat.
What I've also heard is, unless he didn't like you.
I'd hate to be the guy on the receiving end of that.
Yeah. Because that's one big dumper.
Legitimately.
Yeah. Now, did you ever hear the story about how he did start backing that thing up?
I feel like you've told me, but I don't remember. So let's
If
hear it again.
If I'm not mistaken, from the story that I remember him saying in an interview, it was, I think he was at a house show, and he said there was some old lady in the crowd who just was like, he had thrown him in the turnbuckle into the corner, right? And they fell down. You hear the plop, and he goes down. And he starts, walking the other way. He was going to come up, like give like a side slam into him or whatever. And the old woman says one of two things. She says, back that thing up on him, or put your ass on his face, something to that degree. And he said he turned around real fast and looked like, who the hell? And he said he sees this old woman shouting this at him. And he's like, that old lady is saying that to me? So he said, you know what? I want to put my ass on his face. And so he said, that's how the whole thing came about. I throw them in the corner. They plop down. I turn around real fast to look and make sure they're there. And then pull the trousers up and put that gigantic dump truck of an ass on their face.
Could you imagine being the recipient of the very first Rikishi ass?
I would be very confused. I'd be like, why'd you put your ass on my face? I'd be like, what did I do to you? I'd be very upset. I'd be like, we did not talk about this. And he'd probably, I was in the moment. Some old lady was yelling at me. I'd be like, your ass was on my mouth.
Oh, we are much better acquainted now.
Yeah. I'd be like, dude, please buy me dinner now.
Lord.
Oh.
As we're getting out of the 90s and moving into that early 2000s era.
We can go back and forth anytime. It doesn't matter.
Okay. I just have to bring up my favorite my absolute favorite from that era, the Hardy Boys.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, I love them so much. For me, that was another reason why that wrestling worked back then, or wrestling worked so much better back then, was because they weren't constrained. And, you know, we talk about Steve Austin and with that and his character and in his promos and things like that, but also think about the freedom they had in the ring. Like, I absolutely loved seeing a good Swanton Bomb. Like, I mean, the stunts that they pulled, and a lot of the other wrestlers too, but, you know, the things that we saw them do, you just wouldn't see nowadays.
You will not see a tables, ladders, chairs match with 3 teams like Dudley's, and as much as
Dudleys,
I don't like Edge, but at the time, Edge and Christian, and then the Hardy Boys, the way they put on TLC matches, you'll never see matches like that today, unless you hit an indie show.
Right.
Mainstream stuff, you're not going to see people put on a program like that. And a lot of places, you know, it's like you can't do this because of the chair shots, the CTE, brain problems. And I'm fine. I understand that.
I get that it's a safety risk, and this might be terrible. But I think because we're so adverse to safety, we've lost a lot of reality.
I know.
And I think that applies to a lot of things, but especially in wrestling, it's like you can't experience life, or you can't get the same product when everything's covered in styrofoam.
I know.
Like, you know, and I think that applies to a lot of things in today's day and age. But because it was riskier, because they had to be that much more passionate to be willing to jump off of something or, you know, take a chair shot. I just think it made for a better product at the end of the day.
You know, everything you're saying right there embodies what ECW was. A lot of those guys weren't getting paid the big bucks. Well, I'll say this. All the guys weren't getting paid the big bucks.
But they were passionate about it.
Very
and they
passionate.
enjoyed what they were doing.
Yeah, and the fan base they had up there in Philadelphia was insane. Like, they loved it. And those guys down there, a lot of people said they drank Paul Heyman's Kool-Aid, but he was just as passionate about wrestling. I'm not saying if he gypped people on money, that's right. No, it's not right. But for what he did for the business and what those guys did there, the Tommy Dreamers, the Sandmans, the Just Incredibles, the BWO, loved the BWO. They were hilarious.
The Blue Meanie was fantastic.
Oh, and Hollywood Nova. And then Stevie Richards. Oh, Big Stevie Cool. That's who he was. Big Stevie Cool. Yeah, it was such a silly group, but it was great because it was a parody. And I think WCW tried to get it shut down, but they were like, "No, we're safe."
I mean, you have the right to make a parody of something.
Yeah.
I mean, just like with Weird Al. I mean, he has every right to take something and make it silly.
Yeah,
same thing.
Exactly. But ECW was insane. I mean, I've seen stuff on there like the scaffolding matches where they're going like stacked tables on tables on tables through the ceiling. They used to do a match called a Taipei Death Match. Do you know what that is?
I do not.
So they would take like double-sided tape, roll it on their hands, cover that in like Gorilla Glue, dip that in broken glass, and then go out and actually fight each other.
Oh my god.
Now, not everybody would do that. I remember, I can't remember his name now. I don't think it was Balls Mahoney. It might have been somebody from Japan that did it too. But yeah, there was a couple people who would do those kind of matches. And I remember as a kid, ECW was hard to get a hold of. You'd have to go to local shows, and people would like rip VHS tapes and like, here's the ECW show. Like, if you
behind the 7-Eleven down the street.
Pretty much, because like if you didn't have like a channel where you could watch their local show, I'm not sure if like if they were selling VHSs at that time. But ECW was so insane. Like, I couldn't believe the things I had seen. Especially there was a match between Sabu and maybe Terry Funk at the time, and the ring ropes were taken down and replaced with barbed wire.
Oh my god.
It was crazy. And Sabu was known as the suicidal, genocidal, homicidal Sabu. And the man had scars on his body. And he talked about how he would, close them up with crazy glue so he could, go back out and do the next match and do all the stuff.
That's dedication right there.
Yeah. And Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam started over there in ECW and got his notoriety. And he is one of the greatest talents, and to me has been underutilized in WWE. He was
Doesn't he have 2 wives?
I think he has like an official wife and a girlfriend.
Blows my mind. Anyways, continue.
That's what they decided to do. And
I mean, hey, whatever floats your boat.
yeah, I mean, both of them look like they're smuggling 2 holiday turkeys under their dress back there. Like 2 turkeys apiece.
Oh my God.
I'm serious. Like, if you weren't watching where you were going and hit that, you'd bounce off of it. You'd be boing, right back out of there. Those things are huge. I mean, he's having a big old party. So, 420 for him all the time. But let me ask you something. We've danced around a bunch of stuff, okay? A lot of people like to talk about their Mount Rushmores of wrestling. Let's start at the tippy top. Who is your Mount Rushmores? You only get 4. The greatest of all time. And I'm talking any era. I don't care if you want to go back to Bruno Sammartino. You want to go to today with the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Who is your greatest of all time? And do you need a moment?
Oh gosh. I might need a moment. I've got a couple parading in my brain.
I've got my number 1 right off the top, and it is...
Yours is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
My number 1 is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
I agree with you there.
Everything he did in the ring, out of the ring, on screen, everything he did. Most popular wrestler. I mean, I've never seen anybody get the repeated, when his music hit, Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, on a pay-per-view, that crowd exploded. And for me, there is nobody bigger. And I love Flair. I love Taker. I understand what Hogan did for the business. And, go back prior to that. And sure, I'm a 90's baby. You can say I'm biased. I might be biased. He is my favorite. I grew up watching Stone Cold Steve Austin, but I've watched wrestling. I went through and did my homework. I watched Dusty Rhodes in those old NWA matches, and they're good matches. For me, Stone Cold Steve Austin is at the tippy top, and it's not debatable for me. Anybody could bring me a list of whatever, and I'd say, hey, that is fantastic, but here's why Steve Austin's the best. Greatest of all time in my book. Nobody. For me, it's like if I had a Mount Rushmore, I could put Stone Cold Steve Austin up there, and I'd be fine. I'd be like, leave the other 3 empty. I'm okay.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Stone Cold is definitely my number 1. And for me, it's about everything that he brought to WWE. I mean, he is a great person outside of the ring, yes, but I think in being his character and in having the attitude and approaching his work the way he did, I truly think that he shaped and he molded WWE going forward.
In the time of the Attitude Era, when WCW is on fire with Goldberg, Diamond Dallas Page, Booker T, the NWO, Hollywood Hogan, all of this stuff, Macho Man, Randy Savage, all of this stuff is going on. They're kicking their ass in the ratings. Steve Austin grabbed that company, whether Vince in real life liked it or not, because I know he loves a good kiss ass, and Steve Austin, the man, is not a kiss ass, nor was his character, grabbed that company, threw it on his back, and said, let's ride. And he took them boys to the promised land. And he did that, and he was almost paralyzed by Owen Hart. He almost got cut short right as he was on. They say somebody's hot, and then they say somebody's white hot. And he was white hot, the hottest you could be in wrestling. And this man's Austin 316 t-shirts, it was a flood of those shirts. You couldn't watch an episode without seeing those shirts everywhere. Number 1 shirt, and all of his shirts. Everybody loves Steve Austin shirts, whatever he came out with. You couldn't miss what Steve Austin did. And, this is our podcast. I don't know how many people will ever hear us talk about this. People always want to go Austin Rock, Austin Rock, Austin Rock, right? Rock was coming up at that time. I think he's a great rival to Steve Austin. In that point in time, I do not put Austin and Rock on the same level.
No, not at the beginning.
I don't put them at the beginning. For me, it wasn't until probably when Austin was ready to retire or had to retire. In about 2003, I was like, okay, this is fine. Austin's leaving. Rock can kind of take over. As popular as Rock was and as funny as he was and as electrifying as he likes to say as he was, for me, Austin was on a next level. Another level on the mic for me, another level in the ring for me. And, a lot of people might say, hey, no, he was just as popular. In my opinion, no, he wasn't. I really believe Austin was on a pedestal. I mean, he was incredible. How Hogan was for the 80s, Austin was the 90s.
Yeah. Going into my number 2, right up underneath Stone Cold, I'm going to have
Is your number 1 Stone Cold?
Yeah, I told you a second ago.
Oh, that you were confirming that?
I was confirming that, yeah. He's definitely my number 1, because I think he molded that 90s attitude era with the character and what he brought to the stage. But moving on to my number 2, I would have to say Undertaker.
I agree.
I think that he dedicated so much of his life to the company, and as we know, he is very famous for living that character and not breaking kayfabe. I think the dedication that he brought to his character provided a stability and a support from the audience, because everybody knew who he was,
And his in-work ability, I mean, you could say he's like easily top 10 best in-ring workers.
Oh, yeah.
And
Very
you might could argue top 5. Like, I'm not trying to take away from like a Shawn Michaels or something, or an AJ Styles, like guys like that. But Taker could go, and I really believe he probably could be listed top 5, like talent wise.
And it's funny that you say Shawn Michaels, because he's actually, like, I'm still sitting here thinking, if I can only get 4, who am I picking? Shawn Michaels is in the running right now.
Really?
He is, and I just think he had some fantastic matches. He had so much talent.
He did.
But specifically when I'm thinking of him, and this is probably me being biased because of the generation that I grew up in, but I think of DX.
Oh, yeah.
So then I bring in, okay, well, is Triple H on the list? And, like, all of these names. But I think Shawn Michaels there specifically, I mean, don't get me wrong, he had a great character. He had a great stage presence. But just for his pure talent and how far he pushed everybody else to meet him at his level. Yeah. I feel like he really drove the company in that regard of keeping everybody to where they had to stay competitive because they wanted to beat him. And I feel like he just had a lot of natural talent that you don't see a whole lot of.
So are you going with that with your number 3? Are you still thinking?
I think I'm going to go with him for my number 3. I do.
Okay. Now, I've got my number 4.
Okay.
I'm not sure on my number 3 yet, but my number 4 is there because I think the impact this wrestler had is too great to ignore.
Okay.
And as a kid, I loved him. I did. I really did as a kid. I loved him. And nowadays, I'm kind of like, I don't know.
I think I know where you're going with this one.
Yeah, and this is going to sound like a little silly, but I specifically loved Hollywood Hogan. Mm-hmm. Like, NWO Hogan was so vile and so evil then. Like, he could just... I mean, he literally, like, I remember a night on Nitro where he, like, had the NWO in the ring, and, like, he was talking to the camera in the corner, and he was like, I am God, like, he turned it up. And in real life, he had his little kids, and he really was like, I'm not like that, it's just a character I play. But because of everything he did in the WWF, and into the WCW, and then coming back to the WWF, he had such a long career and such a huge impact. For me, it's almost like... I don't think I can be a wrestling fan and not say he doesn't deserve to be on a Mount Rushmore of greatest of all time.
Right.
And I honestly think he does for his career. Definitely does. Steve Austin's my number 1. That's never going to change. Undertaker absolutely deserves to be up there. So I think Hogan has to be my number 4.
Okay.
And I loved Hollywood Hogan more than regular red and yellow. Now, 80s red and yellow I loved. But once we got to that Hollywood Hogan, I never wanted to let go of it. I loved it because of the black and white NWO, the for life. Dude, as a kid, it was too cool. It was so cool to be like that. Whereas WWF had D-Generation X. Theirs was more like sophomore pranks. And they were funny because, they're annoying people as well. Like, NWO was kind of like a
fantastically annoying.
Yes. They were like, NWO was like a gang warfare takeover. We're trying to take over the company, blurring lines. You don't know what's going on. Is this real? Is this kayfabe? What is it? And then D-Generation X over there isn't necessarily going for like a world or company takeover. But they got
There's causing shenanigans.
Oh, shenanigans left and right, and making people so mad.
Showing up with tanks, you know?
That night was fantastic.
Oh, it was a great episode.
So for me, Hogan's my number 4, and I'm kind of undecided on my number 3. In my heart, being a wrestling fan for so long, my heart says, dude, Ric Flair's got to be on your list.
Yeah.
He's got to be on your greatest of all time list. And I feel like that's right. But I also feel like, well, you know, I get to pick, so who would I put?
See, I'm trying to take, like, my personal kind of favorites more so out of it.
Yeah.
And really look at not necessarily the fun characters, but the shaping of the companies and where it's at now. And, you know, I think for that reason, I've got to put Ric Flair on my number 4. Because I think, you know, not that I didn't enjoy him as a character, but he was never necessarily one of my favorites.
Right.
But having said that, he brought so much life to the company and inspired so many others. And, you know, his daughter's there now still continuing to do that. And don't get me wrong, Nature Boy was fantastic and hilarious. But, like, when I think of, like, my favorite characters, it's probably not one of my, I'd say not my top 3 or 4. But I still think at the end of the day, what he gave to WWE, well, he definitely deserves to be considered one of the founding fathers.
So let me ask you this: you're familiar with his WWE work? Mm-hmm. That was like the twilight of his career. Mm-hmm. Did you ever get to see him in WCW?
Yes, yeah, we've gone back and we've watched.
Did I ever take you even further back to NWA?
Maybe a little bit. And see, this is where you're a lot more well-versed with the WCW and all of that. You know, personally, you've shown me, like, hey, let's go watch some good episodes. But I've never just sat down like I have with WWE and just, like, watched it to really be invested in the storylines. So, like, I've seen it. You know, I've seen his work. I know the characters.
Can I tell you it's one of the dumbest but my favorite Ric Flair moment in WCW?
Absolutely.
He's being interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund. And I don't know what he was going off about, but I've watched the clip like 50 times. And at some point, he throws his shoe into the crowd. He kicks his other shoe off. His belt comes off. His jacket has come off. I think he pops his shirt off. Eventually, he's down to his socks and boxers. And
I've seen this.
He's bouncing off the ropes, dropping a high knee onto his trousers, and just wooing it up in there. And just going crazy. You know how Flair, his hair gets flopping and he's just getting red in the face like he's going to pop?
And there's no one can say that they don't enjoy watching that kind of craziness unfold.
I know. And it's kind of like the 1992 Royal Rumble for me is, besides Hogan being Hogan at the very end like he always does, that's one of the annoying things about Hogan.
Yeah.
He always had to put his face where anybody else was getting the spotlight. He had to pop in. Especially Savage. But at the 92 Rumble, when Ric Flair won that, and he wins the world title because he had been, you know, holding the WCW belt, and there's a whole backstory on why he had it called the Real World's title, and he's going around saying he's the champion. He goes to the 92 Rumble and wins it. And that interview backstage, his hair is crazy. He's got blood on his face, and he does one of the best promos. I mean, he's just like, with a tear in my eye. And I'm like, as a kid, when you watch that, and you're like, yeah, you're right, Ric Flair. And then when you watch it now, and I'm like, he was on cocaine. That's unconfirmed. I don't know if he was on cocaine.
But, you know, it's funny because you can look back and watch so many clips from that era, and you're going to think they're on cocaine. Like, or something.
Like Ultimate Warrior.
Because they were, oh my God, he had to be on something. Because there was so much passion about so much nonsense.
Warrior had passion and the same amount of nonsense because his interviews were scary because, like, if I'm behind the camera, I'm like, I think he's plotting a terrorist attack. Because, like, he's like, Hulk Hogan, I put the plane into a nosedive, Hogan. And people's like, I think he killed someone. And he's admitting it in his weird warrior way where it doesn't make sense to us. Like, he said something one time that was like, He used the lawnmowers to mow the grass on the back of the giant elephants. And everybody's like, sure, Mr. Warrior. You know he changed his real name to Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, I know. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
If I were him, I would change my name to Warrior too.
Oh, he did. Yeah, Jim
Why
Hellwig.
did you just say that like Kramer? Oh, he did.
But Ric Flair, and it's funny too, because he had so many funny moments like that, but he also had, prior to him being kind of funny and doing those things, he was always very passionate. And I mean, he'd get up there talking about the Rolexes and telling people, like, I'm Space Mountain, and he'd always be like, I might be the oldest ride, but I've still got the longest line. And
that sounded like Matthew McConaughey.
It did. I'm going to drive my Lincoln later and go watch an old Ric Flair match. Might even pop a top on a nice Coors Light.
Could you imagine Ric Flair and Matthew McConaughey hanging out, drinking some scotch?
Those are two contrasts that are insane because McConaughey's over here talking about driving a Lincoln real slow, and Ric Flair is literally, woo! Through the roof. Insane.
I love it.
So, let's recap Mount Rushmore's. My number 1 is Steve Austin. My number 2 is Taker. My 3 undecided. 4 is Hogan. What are yours? Austin, Taker.
I had Austin. I had Taker. I had Shawn Michaels for my number 3, and then Ric Flair for my number 4.
Number 4. Okay. I don't know who I would put as number 3 unless I did. I guess as a wrestling fan, just Ric Flair would make sense.
Yeah.
Because of the entire, if you're thinking about impact on wrestling, Steve Austin I put there because absolutely his impact on wrestling is forever changed the product. Mm-hmm. Hogan, got to put Hogan in my opinion. Taker absolutely deserves to be there. And Flair deserves to be there. So that's my top 4. Number 1 is Austin. The other 3 you can shuffle however you want.
Yeah.
But Austin is my number 1.
That's fair.
So let's go into, while we're on Mount Rushmores, let's do an ECW and WCW Mount Rushmore. Like, who are the top 4 guys for each one of those companies that is like, when you look back, you go, yeah, that's ECW, that's WCW.
So I think some of the top names that come to mind, I think of RVD.
You got to put RVD for ECW, yep.
Think of Diamond Dallas Page.
For WCW.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I think of Tommy Dreamer.
Tommy Dreamer, yeah, absolutely.
And Sandman, yeah.
Sandman, you can't, yeah, Sandman.
Yep. Trying to think Sting.
Oh, Sting's definitely on the
gosh.
WCW Rushmore.
He's probably like
I thought about
Rushmore
Sting.
there.
I thought about Sting on my. I kind of went back and forth on it, but Sting's absolutely on the WCW Mount Rushmore. Now, real quick, today's episode is sponsored to you by the great company Dumpco.
When I go with Dumpco.
Do you know what today's product is?
I do not know what today's product is. Can you tell us about it?
Well, let me ask you a quick question. Do you ever worry that your smile isn't big and boastful enough?
Yeah, I do.
Well, now, thanks to those good people over at Dumpco, they are bringing you a brand new product called Donkey Teeth.
Donkey teeth?
Made out of real donkey. Dumpco slaughters thousands of donkeys a week. What do they do with the teeth?
I don't know.
They make those teeth into their brand new marketed donkey teeth for people. So now, if your grandma has lost her teeth, plop some donkey teeth in that old gammer, and you're good to go.
Sign me up. Where can I get donkey teeth?
Have you ever been to a Pilot?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a Flying J?
Of course.
Have you ever been to a Petro truck stop?
Oh, yeah. My favorite is when they have the restaurants attached to them.
You'll find this wonderful product near every restroom.
I will get one the next time I'm there.
So the next time you have family photos and you feel like your smile is lacking, pop some donkey teeth in your mouth. Thanks, Dumpco. Now, so we were talking about Mount Rushmore's. WCW's Mount Rushmore for me has got to be Goldberg.
Oh, yes.
Got to be Sting. Mm-hmm. Throw some Booker T on there. And Diamond Dallas Page.
I love it.
So ECW for me, Rob Van Dam.
Yes.
Sabu. The Sandman. Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah. think that about nails it.
What about for yourself? Any alterations?
No, I think that's pretty in line with what I would say.
Perfect. So let's go into best groups. Now,
Ooh,
this one might
best
be a little
groups.
different here and there for me and you. Okay?
I mean, top 2 right off the top, D-Generation X and the Hardy Boys. Ooh, and the Dudley Boys.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So tag teams, we're considering like groups.
Yeah, looking at groups, like those are the 3.
Okay.
The 3 that really,
My number 1, the New World Order.
Mm-hmm.
NWO. New World Order. I loved those intros when they would come in. Because, like, they would have them in there and mix throughout the music. You would hear New World Order. You know, just like NWO. Like, just all kind of crazy stuff in there. And they had the crazy laughter in the background of the song. And, I mean, when you knew that music hit, like, there for a while later on, everybody became NWO at some point, it seemed like.
oh my God, there at one point, I think everybody was a member. All of them.
I mean, Hogan pulls up in the backstage one night, and there's like 75 people around his limo, guys you don't care about. Everybody's got an NWO t-shirt on. Like, Horace Hogan? Nobody cares about Horace Hogan.
Nope.
He was he was like a cousin or nephew to Hollywood Hogan. And that's how he's there. Pop an NWO t-shirt on him, now he's a guy, right? And it's also like Buff Bagwell. People kind of knew Buff Bagwell, but you toss an NWO shirt on him, and now he's just, hanging out with the group, and he gets more screen time. But when the NWO started, and it was just the 3, and it kind of grew a little bit, I did like how it grew. I liked how it was like, they beat your ass, and then they're like, you're either with us or you're against us, and these guys would either, like DDP's like, nah, I'm never turning, and Goldberg's never going to turn. And Sting fought the NWO. He only joined the cool NWO. Like, NWO Wolfpack wasn't the evil NWO.
Right.
And I feel like at that point in time, when they did do the split, and they did the red and black, and they had the black and white, it was cool. It was still cool. Mm-hmm. But I think most wrestling fans would agree, it was solid when it was like the 3,
Well, I mean, it's like there's a big piece of that exclusivity where, it's the top of the top, the creme de la creme.
And then when you start adding guys like Horace Hogan, Juventud Guerrera,
then it becomes a fad.
Yeah. And they kind of made the big group. And they were doing the WCW versus NWO. They were trying to split the company in half and, kind of create their own competition. Because at some point, WCW did get a little high on themselves. And they're like, oh, we're going to put Vince out of business. And so they were like, it's WCW versus NWO. There was actually full plans to have an NWO show. NWO marketed, like, whole brand and have a whole WCW brand, like how they're and so then they did do Nitro and Thunder, but there was like plans to actually do an NWO entity on its own.
That would have been interesting.
Somewhat on its own. Well, it would have been interesting unless the NWO guys are fighting NWO guys and everyone's wearing black and white and everybody's music is the NWO music. Then it'd be kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the full plan was. I just know that there was an idea about it. But NWO, regardless, is on my group list. D-Generation X, whatever entity version of DX you want to talk about, the original Shawn Michaels leadership. If you want to go to the DX Army, where the New Age Outlaws, and they're driving the tanks and doing the fun stuff like that. The 2006, where they get back together. Mm-hmm. Do you know there was a fake out where they were getting back together before they actually got back together?
Really?
I was watching that episode that night. And Shawn had come backstage, and I don't remember if this was like, I don't think it was 2002. It might have been, I don't know what year it was. I don't know if Shawn had come back full-time or not. But he comes backstage, and he's like, hey, man, we got to get together, got to do this. He's like, I need your help. And he throws him a T-shirt, and, Shawn leaves the room, and Triple H turns it around, D-Generation X. And he goes to commercial break, and everyone, is like, holy crap, DX is getting back together. Holy crap. Oh, my God, I can't leave for snacks. When's that commercial ending? And it comes back. DX's music hits. Shawn and Triple H are on the stage. You're thinking, yes, this is about to happen. Didn't even get down the ramp, and Triple H beat Shawn's ass.
Oh, my God.
And he rips his shirt off, and he starts saying stuff like, I don't need you, and blah, 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 and all this, I am the game, So there was the fake out. And then they actually did get back together in 2006, and those pranks were so funny to me. They made fun of Vince and Shawn. They spray painted DX or WWE headquarters DX.
Oh, I remember that.
They spray painted his, all in story, of course, but it was so funny that they did that. Mm-hmm. I loved that. So NWO and DX are two of mine. Who's two of yours? What'd you say?
DX and the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
And had the Dudley Boys on there.
So that's your four?
I think so.
You got Hardy's, Dudley's, DX, and...
Probably NWO.
That's your four?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's my four.
So for me, I would probably say NWO, D-Generation X, and I love the Hardy Boys. And they were the second brood.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say they're my favorite tag team wrestlers. I could put them fourth, but third would have to go to the Four Horsemen.
Oh, yeah.
Ric Flair's
good
Four
choice.
Horsemen.
Good
Yeah,
choice.
I loved some Four Horsemen back in the day. To me, that's what, and I think Triple H might actually have said this, and I'm not saying just to me, but I believe Evolution was based on that old Four Horsemen style, because there was four of them. Flair's leading. He's kind of, Ric Flair's kind of the older leader. Triple H is the now, and Randy and Batista are the future. That's what they are. And Evolution was great. I mean, they were on top of it. Great wrestlers all the way around, and I loved watching Evolution. I did. Really reminded me of the old Four Horsemen days.
Yeah.
So I would probably put the Four Horsemen on there.
Okay. I think those are some solid choices.
Now, do you want to talk about TNA Impact?
Let's talk about it. Let's do it.
So they started out in 2002. Mm-hmm. Jeff Jarrett.
Oh, love me some Jeff Jarrett.
You like the
Double J strut?
Yeah. So Vince hates him. And whenever he bought WCW, he fired him on TV.
Give us your fired.
You're fired.
Oh, yeah, there you go. We need a sound bit of that.
Yeah, so he hated him because you've heard the story about where he held him up for the Intercontinental title. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was like, give me the money I deserve. I think he's been back to WWE when Vince was there. I think they put him in the Hall of Fame. Did they?
Too, yeah.
Or was he just there? I don't know. I think he might be in the Hall of Fame. But he started TNA Wrestling, and actually when it started, man, I freaking loved it. I mean, the six-sided ring was very cool. I mean, it was different. AJ Styles, and then they brought in Sting. Sting never signed to WWE. And so whenever I heard Sting was back, dude, I was a huge Sting fan. I would watch SmackDown. Oh, he was. Oh, awesome.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I would. He was, in fact, Bailey looked it up. He was, in fact, put in the TNA Hall of Fame. Not TNA Hall of Fame, WWE Hall of Fame.
He was in both.
Oh, he is in both. Yeah,
He's in both?
That makes sense. He's in TNA Hall of Fame and WWE Hall of Fame.
He was inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame in 2015, and then the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018.
I mean, that makes sense. But when they got Sting over there, that's really what made me I don't want to miss this. I want to see what's next. When it was first before then, they had AJ Styles. They had the house, the guys that built TNA.
Right.
And it was good. It was good wrestling, really good wrestling. But, I was I'm still watching WWE. I want to see what Taker's doing on SmackDown. See Batista, Matt Hardy, Jeff Hardy, whoever's going on at the time. Once Raw got John Cena, and I rarely will speak his name, if at all. But I do not like speaking his name because he actually ruined the product for me for a very, very, very long time.
Oh, I know.
And that's not something I'll go back on.
We can have a whole episode on that at another time.
Okay. So I really didn't really care to watch what he was doing over there on Raw. I really liked to watch SmackDown. But TNA Impact at the time, I think, was going on Thursdays. And so you had, Monday Night Raw, and then you had, where was SmackDown at that time? It was either, they had swapped it so much. It was either Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, somewhere in there. But I believe they had moved to Wednesday or Friday, and we had TNA on Thursdays. And I just loved it. They had brought Scott Steiner in. Kevin Nash had come in. He wasn't really wrestling. He was more so in the backstage, helping some of the younger guys or whatever. But at that point in time, I couldn't wait to see Sting. He was really, for me, why I was watching TNA. Not that the other guys weren't great, but it was like when I tune into SmackDown, I'm waiting for Taker to come out.
Right.
When I tune into TNA, I'm waiting to see what Sting's storyline was. And I actually ordered TNA pay-per-views back in the day because of Sting. And I had only ever bought a couple WWE pay-per-views, like being a kid and a teenager, you're going through mom and dad as a kid.
Mom and dad get a bat for us.
Mommy, can I please have the pay-per-view? And, I'd usually get them when they come out on DVD. It wasn't a big deal then, but because it's a big price difference. Like back then, people don't understand. It was like $60 or more to order a pay-per-view.
That was a lot of money back then. I mean, it's a lot of money now.
Yeah. And they call them premium live events now, and they're all like through Peacock or whatever. So you pay $10 a month. That's a big difference.
Yeah.
You get an entire library and all their premium live events. And back then, if you wanted to watch the pay-per-view, you're paying $60 to $90 to watch it one time. Maybe catch the encore if they let you have that. So it was a really big deal to do that. So you would have to wait, and if you waited to get to see the pay-per-view on the episodes that you're watching throughout in between there, you already know who wins and loses. But to see the matches, you'd pick up the DVD and you go see who wins.
Can I pause this thought?
Sure, go for it.
Completely off the wrestling train.
Yeah.
But that's what's wrong with society. We would all go in with our friends, rent a pay-per-view, and we would have, Friday night, Sunday night, Saturday night, whatever. We'd just all get together, watch the pay-per-view, somebody bring some chips. We just all hang out.
Yeah.
Now, everybody has it. It's on their streaming service. No need to have a big hoopla about it. I mean, it's just become what you watch on Sunday nights, And I think there's a lot of that in our world where a lot of the things that used to connect us have become so mainstream and easily accessible, or just not a social norm, that we're all so isolated and we don't just hang out anymore.
Yeah, like video games back in the day.
Yeah.
You'd be like, oh, dude, did you get the new Mortal Kombat for Nintendo 64? No, I didn't get to get it. But, Tom got it. Let's go to his house tonight.
Yeah, you used to have LAN parties. Like, what happened to all of that?
Yeah, you'd go pick up a couple pizzas, Domino's, Papa John's, go over to your buddy's house, pop in the Mortal Kombat on the Nintendo 64, grab a couple VHS tapes at Blockbuster. And, it was cool. You had to connect. And now it's like, well, yeah, I could play with you online. Yeah, I can watch it at my house and we just text about it. Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Oh, I know. Sorry, I know that's a tangent, and I could honestly have a whole episode on what's wrong with society. But
I mean, honestly, it's pretty on brand for what we're talking about. How wrestling has changed, the premium live events versus the pay-per-views. It's the same thing. It's changed.
So it's like, to me, there's not a whole lot of difference between watching a Monday Night Raw and some of the pay-per-views. Like,
they're pretty much the same.
They're pretty bland. Like, unless it's like one of the big ones, like a WrestleMania or something like that.
And even now, like, the biggest things that happen on those is like a high spot. Like, holy crap, did you see that big elbow drop? Well, yeah, Macho Man was doing those elbow drops back in the day.
Nobody is jumping off buildings anymore.
I'm not saying
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I just need somebody to climb a ladder, get up in the rafters, jump off something tall. It's not that much to ask for.
And another thing I thought about too is like, we are in a very PC age of wrestling, and we don't have to have every match people blowing each other's heads off with chair shots.
I mean,
it would be great.
but we don't have to. Okay.
But it's like, why couldn't you sit down with lawyers?
Okay.
Leave the weapon reference. Why couldn't you sit down with lawyers and be like, look, here's what I want to do. Here's what I'm comfortable with. I want to get hit with a chair.
Well, because the thing is you're thinking of it from the aspect of the liability of the company, but they're looking at it from the liability of the company that has influence on others. And I'm not saying I agree. I completely support a non-PC WWE.
Yeah.
But where they're coming from is more so, if we let this guy jump off the top of the Jumbotron, some little kid's going to go and jump off his roof. And I think that's where a lot of it stems from, is the fear of lawsuit. But like we talked about earlier in the episode...
Well, back in the day, they were doing that. And they used to do those little videos at the beginning. They would say, don't try this at home.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I agree. I just think that everybody's gotten so afraid of being sued and everybody's gotten so butthurt, and we've got so many snowflakes that it'll happen. If they do it, somebody's kid's going to jump off of something, and they're going to blame WWE.
Yeah.
Versus back in the 90s, your mom just would have beat you whenever you got done getting out of the hospital because you were stupid.
Yeah.
Not because you were inside watching WrestleMania beforehand, you know?
Yeah.
But like we talked about earlier in the episode, that's a lot of the reality and the passion and a lot of the stifling that we've seen.
Oh, yeah.
Just my 2 cents.
It's severely hurt the product.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying now that WWE's Raw and maybe all of it's going to Netflix. And, you know,
I think it is. Like, I think that was confirmed.
Yeah. And I've heard the rumblings of people like, oh, it's going to be so much different on Netflix. My prediction for that is you're going to hear more curse words.
Yeah, and that's not the same.
It's not the same as seeing guys, you know, having tables matches, having casket matches, buried alive matches, backstage brawls.
Well, and I mean, you know, if I think about it, if I'm going to like a local wrestling match, like nothing big, nothing professional, just some guys getting together wrestling in the backyard.
Yeah.
And they got a little bit of an audience, maybe paying $5 to get in. If I'm going and watching those guys, I'm going to get a better quality wrestling match than I would from WWE because they're still passionate about it.
Maybe, to clarify, maybe not mat wrestling.
Okay, but you know what I'm saying. Like,
right.
if I went to like a little indie ring,
much
like,
more
you know,
entertaining, yeah.
It's going to be more entertaining because those people still have creativity.
Oh, yeah.
And not saying that the talent we have doesn't, but that they're not allowed to use it.
Yeah.
More so, you know?
They're boxed in on what they're allowed to do, what they can't do, what they can say, what they can't say.
Yep.
There's no room for creativity and no freedom of expression in there. And you've got to have that because look back at Taker, how he was able to go, you know what, times are changing. Maybe the dead man, Ministry of Darkness kind of thing isn't what we need right now. And he changed into basically Mark Calloway. He became this biker version who's really him.
Yeah.
Loves motorcycles. He's got the BSK. Wears the bandanas. Like, he's just now living his life as Taker. And personally, Big Evil, like, he had the American Badass. Everybody always calls Biker Taker, they go straight to American Badass. And I get it. That's where he started. But when he became Big Evil for me, man, I loved it so much. I understand it was like a heel turn and all that, but I loved Big Evil. Man, he was vicious. Like, I was like, dude, don't step in Taker's yard. Don't do it. Like, anytime somebody come messing around, sniffing around Taker's yard, I was like, nope, he's going to die tonight. I told him not to from my living room on my TV. I told him don't go in there. But he did anyways. But
don't you just hate that? I mean, we can tell them all day long, and they don't listen to us.
I know. I was sitting there eating a thing of nachos, extra cheese, getting it all over my Austin 316 t-shirt. And I'm yelling at Billy Kidman, don't go in there. Taker specifically said at the beginning of the show, don't mess with this stuff.
For visual references, were you wearing pants and covered in Cheeto dust?
Legally, I don't have to disclose that information.
But non-legally.
Non-legally? Oh, yeah, I did have pants on. Are you kidding me? Sheesh.
Well, I would expect nothing less.
I wouldn't want to get cheese sauce on my trousers. You know, I always wanted those freaking leather pants that Taker had. Dead Man ink on the side. I wanted those freaking pants so bad.
You still want those pants, don't you?
I would love to have those pants. It wouldn't make no sense for me to wear them. Like, people are like, what's that guy doing? You know, what's up with that? But I would love those pants. Like,
we do live in the South, though, so.
Yeah. If I could get back down to the ideal weight I would want to be at, you know, I'd probably wear those pants a lot more. It's kind of like,
we're at Chubby Cheese. We ain't gonna do that.
That's true.
We're gonna have another round of donuts.
That sounds good. It's kind of like Taker with those snake pants, and I love that he finally cleared the air on that.
Oh, that was a great story, though. I don't know.
I think it's a lot funnier than him forgetting pants.
I don't know. I kind of liked the myth.
You liked the myth?
I liked that this, because it's just such a human story. Like, aw, crap, I forgot my pants. Hey, bud, can I have yours?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just good friendship, and, you know, it happens. People forget their pants.
Yeah, it was so out of place because he always would wear like his black pants, or he would occasionally like wear blue jeans as the biker. And then you get to that pay-per-view, which I think was like it wasn't a Judgment Day. Fully loaded. Mm-hmm. It was fully loaded, and he was wrestling Kurt Angle, and he comes out in those dang snake pants, and everyone was like, "What is Taker wearing?" And instantly, the story that went around for years was he borrowed Godfather's pants because he forgot his, pants. I was trying to say his.
Oops, forgot my pants.
Yeah. And then he clears the air on it, and he's like, I really wanted some snakeskin pants. And I told the lady backstage who does the outfits, and she's like, no, you don't. And I thought that was kind of funny, because he's like...
She's like,
Yeah, because he's like, yeah, I do.
It's kind of like me and you. You're like, I got an idea. And I'm like, no. And you're like, oh, yeah, let's do it.
That'll be good.
Oh, yeah, that's good. Lord. A lot of times we joke that I'm the gas pedal and you're the brake. But in some situations, I gotta check you. You'll come up with some wild, just crazy thing. You're like, oh yeah, this is good.
I mean, it'd be a lot of...
This is good shit.
This is good shit. He's gonna puke. We were supposed to be talking about TNA Impact, and I don't know how I derailed that. Derailed that hard.
That's okay. I think at the end of the day, I've had a great time. We've had a good discussion. We can talk about TNA another day. I'm sure we will.
I think we need to do a few more episodes on this because we kind of were all over the place 90s to now. And I mean, it's honestly
so much fun to
there's
debate.
So much.
There's so much stuff. We should just pick like a topic and dissect it.
We need to. We're going to have to go through like a WWF section, a WCW section, probably a Stone Cold episode.
Well, thank you so much for joining into Chubby Cheese, everyone, where we have now determined that this is a WWE, TNA, WCW, ECW podcast.
All wrestling all the time.
Chubby Cheese.
Well, we will see you fatties next time.
Looking around for a butt buffet.
I love food. I love eating food. Whether it's hot or it's cold, I'm in the mood.
Gotta get some right up in his boot. Right in the undercarriage, that looks cute.
I got stuff in my ass, that's true. It's not grass, it's fruit. I got a butt buffet.
He's got a butt buffet, like every day. He's got 2 apples and a motherfucking grape. Can I get maybe 1 orange? All I wanna know, what rhymes with orange?
Every single day I got a butt buffet.